right, here we go.
We are here.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing. Are we coming? We're coming in. I'm coming in hot as sins. Hang on.
Okay.
Let me just turn
Chat,
my record
stand
down.
by. We're
I can turn my record volume down on the mic. So Rudy, say some stuff.
testing 1, 2, 3.
Cool. So I'm gonna make sure I'm close to you. Chat. You need to be our guide on this a little bit.
Yep. We just got some new tech here.
We have
and,
new toys.
Yeah. So chat, if you would be so kind, just let us know how we're coming in.
Coming in hot from Dreamland.
From Dreamland.
Dreamland.
I am Rodolfo Carlos.
And I am Jordan Pacheco, also known as Jordan the Magnificent.
So we also have a brand new HD setup coming towards you from the Glad Trad podcast studio.
That's right. It is a legit studio too, it feels like.
So chat, let us know how it's going.
Mm-hmm. We have people populating. Hello there. Hi there. Finally. That's from Kim. Grace says hello. So we have mother-daughter. How's it going, guys? Good to see you guys. How's it been, Rudy?
Jordy, it's been fantastic.
You are now just beyond a month into married life.
Yep. Everything's falling apart.
Yep. Does she hate you?
The honeymoon is over.
Okay, right. What honeymoon?
Yeah, we couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, right. But it's good. How's settling in been?
It's good. Yeah, everything's great. I don't really have anything to report other than if you caught our little standalone videos, you might have seen that I got a new prayer book.
Ooh, yes.
So
you don't have it on hand for those that might have missed, but if they would like to see it, we have a standalone video that's literally the last one inside. So after this podcast, you can go and check out the prayer book. Tell me about it. It's a 1926, was it?
Yeah, it's a book that was printed in the 20s.
Okay.
And it's still actually available. You can, if you go to the link to, if you go to the previous video, there's a link in the description. And there's also a standalone video of Jordan with a soft referendum on Vatican II.
Okay, so we'll mention this briefly because it's funny. For whatever reason, I don't know what spurned it. I can only think that the protest and the church burning has kind of made more people come out of the woodwork. You have on one hand people like Bishop Strickland from Tyler, Texas, who celebrated their first Latin Mass, and he has a really wonderful article on LifeSite. We posted a little snippet of the headline on our Instagram page that you can see, but essentially he's fallen head over heels in love with the Latin Mass. We know that Archbishop Vigano celebrates Latin Mass pretty much exclusively now in hiding in his bunker. So you have it's this real big talk on Vatican II, of course, because there's a lot of
the golden calf.
There's a lot of the golden calf, right? Ooh, that's true. And it's funny because people are coming out of the woodwork, as always, on and around Vatican II. I made a little video that was just discussing that what's going on is that there's a soft referendum on Vatican II, that as more people discover tradition and orthodoxy and really start to look at the council documents, they're beginning to see problem spots, for a nice term. They're beginning to see things that need to be talked about. For me, one of the big ones was, and I didn't realize it was embedded in the documents the way that it was, but again, there's not really a lot of conversation around, do Muslims and Christians worship the same God? It just kind of one day popped into a church document. And the more that I listen to, the more that I study, the more that I read, the more I'm convinced that that's, of course, like history shown, it's not the case. And what's funny is that if we do worship the same God, then why are the bishops today having a day of mourning for the Hagia Sophia being turned into a mosque? If it's all being oriented correctly to God, then why would we be sad about that kind of a thing?
It certainly seems like a shoe-in, right? 50 years ago, they're like, all right, we're planting the seed so that in 2016 or whatever, the Pope at that particular moment in time, he's going to create a monolithic area where Jews and Muslims and Christians will worship together. And hopefully by then we'll have a one world government and a one world religion, and everything's going to be dandy.
I've always said this as a joke, but now it's true. I used to be less conspiratorial, if you will.
Yeah, I remember you used to burn me with that.
Yeah, I used to, but now I see the connection.
Rudy, you're being a little paranoid.
Yeah,
I don't know, Jordan.
Well, I don't
feel like...
Look, let's give a perfect example, right? How do you have the United Nations and Bono and all that kind of crowd is being hosted?
What is Bono doing at the Vatican?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like what are people who have not only nothing to do with the church, but have very, very intrinsically evil views? Contraception is an intrinsic evil, by the way, for instance.
Yeah.
The Pope, look, I'm totally fine with dining with sinners and prostitutes. Don't get me wrong whatsoever. I'm totally fine with the Vatican having concerts and inviting people in that normally wouldn't be the Vatican. But when we talk about the policy of the church, Bill Gates and Bono are not on the same page as the Roman Catholic Church is on a ton of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's a little, you're like, I don't know what's going on. Could there have been an infiltration? Who knows?
Infiltration trademark.
Infiltration trademark, yeah. But yeah, so, and...
You know what it is, Jordy? I think that all of this conversation started when you, me, and Anthony started playing Rocket League together.
Oh my
and
gosh.
we started the clan Vatican II was a mistake. and it just so happened to be that one day we were playing against the Pope.
Yeah.
And the Pope was like, that's it. I'm sending a memo to all of my bishops.
Yeah.
I want them to talk about Vatican II and let everybody know that it's fantastic. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to the church.
Yeah. People really need to... So I thought that there's a fine line that as a traditionalist you can take on Vatican II, because the answer isn't... Because the answer isn't like, well, it just never happened. It happened, and it was an ecumenical council. That's something as a trad you have to fully accept, because the history of the church is... with an understanding of ecumenical councils that they happen. So what's kind of cool, though, is that the question is, even if it's an ecumenical council, does Vatican II teach new dogma or new doctrine? No. And this isn't something that's coming from the trad circle. All my entire life, I've never heard dogma or doctrine tied to Vatican II, really like fine print. I've heard, of course, that it was a springtime of awakening, the new evangelization, the Nova Theology, all that kind of stuff brought in. But when you actually get down, the documents go really out of the way to say that there are things that aren't anathema. And, people say, well, it's a magisterial document, which of course it is. It's a council, and so therefore it carries the magisterial authority, which it does. But again, the question is, on what dogma or doctrine am I as a Catholic in 2020 bound by via Vatican II that I might have not been in 1955? Yeah. Again, so it's a genuine question for a lot of the bishops and priests who are making very, very pro Vatican II videos out there.
We might have just lost our mandatum.
Oh no, the mandatum. We should have a button, the replay live. Yeah, there was a mandatum. Oh well. Oh, I don't need it because I'm going away. But no, the question is very simple. Am I, as a Catholic, in 2020, on pains of anathema, allowed to believe that Allah and the risen Lord are not the same God? That the worship that Muslims orient, while it's nice that they believe in something, is to a God that's been so malformed and misconstrued that I would say, just as Muhammad is a false prophet, Allah is a false God. Is that something that I, as a Catholic, can believe on pains of anathema? Am I still a good Catholic? For calling that seriously in Dignitatis Humanae and in Lumen Gentium into question? Or am I allowed to believe that? Am I allowed to look at Vatican II and say, okay, I can see the policy change, but it's not on pains of anathema to me, right? It's a genuine question. And what we're seeing now, especially because a lot of the Latin masses have remained open and have really worked hard to bring out the beauty of the faith throughout the whole coronavirus lockdown, what we've actually seen is an influx of new parishioners, not just in our parish, but all across the fraternity. I was talking to a priest from the fraternity that's in charge of development, and that's what he was saying, that like they're booming yet again because people have been denied the sacraments or the reverence.
Yeah, it's a godsend. We've seen a lot of people in our daily mass even completely filling up the whole church.
Daily mass is filled now.
I mean, just to give you guys a little context, if you're not from around here, we're only allowed to have about 100 people in our masses because of the restrictions regarding the virus. And that's as much as we can have. Some churches, they have less of a restriction because they have more space. Yeah. But we're literally like in a little parking lot, so we can only have 100 people. And for a daily mass, where before the lockdowns, there was maybe, 13, 15 people or something like that.
Still high for a daily mass.
Which is still pretty high. Now we have like almost a fully booked seating arrangement where there's like almost nowhere else to sit, which is great. And the good thing is that because people get an opportunity to attend and receive the sacraments there, they can then firstly experience the Latin Mass and request that from their own pastor, but also to request the sacraments to be returned to them at their own parish.
Right.
So it's a twofold thing. They're kind of getting an experience of tradition, and also, you know, they have more of a bargaining chip to say, look, hey, Pastor so-and-so, man, we've been out for months now, and it doesn't seem like you're doing anything to bring us back, and I really need the sacraments.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard so many stories of like people having to postpone baptisms and that sort of thing. Jesus. And I don't think we have like, I know you and I do, and a lot of people on the ground do, but I think a lot of like the authority, they don't have that pressure, or maybe they're not thinking about it too hard, because these are very, very serious things. I mean, for a child not to be baptized.
Well, once upon a time, it used to be a serious
70
thing.
years ago, yeah.
That's right. I mean, the idea was this. It's very funny. So I was away on vacation for a little bit with Jen's family, their family vacation. And she has a member of the family who's not a Catholic, not a Christian. And was asking, we sat down, we were talking about the faith, and I was using it as a moment of a bit of evangelization. And she was asking me, well, what's the necessaries of baptism? Do Catholics think that if you're not a Catholic, you're not saved? And I said, Christ himself has given us the common means of salvation, right? So while someone like Didymus on the cross, right, might not be baptized, but Christ says to him, today you'll be in paradise. That's an extraordinary circumstance, you know? But the normal means of salvation are through the sacraments, because the sacraments come from God, administered to the church to distribute to the entire world. So yes, it is. So I believe Christ. When Christ says, unless you're born of water and spirit, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven, we take that literally. The Catholic Church has had this really grand track record of the necessity of baptism.
Just look back into history and look at the missionary history of the church. Last episode, we talked about the missionary spirit of Saint Junipero Serra. Yeah. And there's numerous missionaries that we could talk about in history. For example, Lefebvre in Africa, the Jesuits going to the Asian countries.
Yeah, Asian countries. North America for the Jesuits.
North America, huge. That's true.
Yeah. The Jesuits, the reason why, again, Junipero Serra was in California was because the Jesuits had been expelled out of Mexico. And Junipero Serra was a Dominican. So it was a changing of the guard in the best way possible. But yeah, it's like there's the necessity of baptism. So for the idea that, and the reason why, of course, is that we give our best back to God, and that God wants to claim each and every one of us rightfully as his son or daughter. And the way that we initiate that literally is through baptism. So to hear suddenly that, well, baptism's been postponed, again, you know, something like limbo isn't something that's dogmatic, right? It's not doctrinal. But the question, again, is a normal means of salvation. I don't want to put a chance when I have this little soul that God has given to me. Well, if my child passes, like, oh, he'll just go straight to heaven. It's like, you can believe that totally fine as a Catholic. It doesn't do anything for damaging. But again, there isn't that knowledge because we have Christ's words. And so this idea that we take invincible ignorance, or that we take the extraordinary means of salvation, baptism by desire, whatever, baptism by blood, whatever, and we say, well, that must mean that everybody's good, right? Again, like it's like when no confession except in extreme circumstances. And I was under the impression that every mortal sin sends you to hell, and that's an extreme circumstance.
Yeah, just imagine it. You're driving home, and you had there's circumstances, right? So if you had the intention to go to the sacrament and you weren't able to, you're probably going to be okay, hopefully. I mean, there's things that you have to do to make that happen.
Right.
But let's say, for example, you weren't thinking about it, you weren't aware of it, and you're driving home, and God, decides, hey, that's your time.
Well, and this was the important thing for that conversation with this person, because what I was saying is that, again, we do this out of a place of love. Christ came into the world and commanded us to baptize, not to be an oppressive law where we are he is master, we are slaves, right? Christ says, no longer slaves, I call you friends. Right. It's an invitation into the life of the church. And as Catholics, of course, we're not once saved, always saved people. So being a Catholic doesn't guarantee your salvation. We know that it's through the church that salvation is dispensed, extra ecclesia nulli salus. But the answer isn't to just, chalk it into the wind and hope everything's fine. Right. We have a guarantee of how to get to heaven. Christ laid that out, and we also have a guarantee on how to get to hell. Christ was very clear about that too.
That's the tragedy of today. when I was teaching young students for preparing them for confirmation, I could never shake the feeling that at the end, for some, after having received their confirmation, they felt like, okay, they were done and they didn't have to worry about anything
A graduation
for the rest
from the
of
Catholic
their life.
Church. Yeah.
You know, and I know that from certain family members that, you know, they say, oh yeah, I go to mass like maybe once a year. I'm okay. It's like, no, man, you're not okay. You don't realize how sick you are.
Yeah. And so I think that part of this soft referendum on Vatican II is coming from more Catholics, especially now that the sacraments have been ripped away and maybe discovering it in a whole new way.
Right.
With the Latin Mass, with the return of tradition, really seeing the necessity of Christ first and foremost, his social kingship, and what that looks like in the church. And it's not okay to think that things are just going to be okay, because now we have literally seen what happens when the sacraments are gone. And it's terrifying, you know, because a lot of things that we take for granted are just gone all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are those who are trying to cling to this idea that, again, Vatican II opened up the doors always. And it's not like Vatican II did everything objectively bad. I really do think that the call to universal holiness is a good thing. I think that the lady's always been pretty good about keeping the faith in some pockets, but I think with all the media that's going on, it's very, very lay-led. There are so many good Catholics who are using the means in their ordinary lives to give back to God, and I think that's great. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly how we started.
That's precisely how we started.
I was thinking about this the other day because I was trying to get a really famous guy on our podcast.
All a good time.
And you know, as of right now, we're pretty much like nobodies. But I was thinking about how we came about, and I don't know if we ever told a story like fully.
I don't think so.
But
the real truth
behind the Glatrad podcast. You and I were hanging out, and we were talking about the Mass because I had just started going to the traditional Latin Mass. And this was right around the same time that the McCarrick stuff was bubbling to the surface, and a lot of other things that were happening in the church at that particular moment. And we were both thinking like, hey, I'm going into despair here. There's like all of this stuff that's coming out, and I just don't feel good anymore. I need something good, you know? Yeah. And that's how we started. We said, hey, actually, there aren't a lot of people who are doing happy things. Why don't we start something?
You know what's funny is that's right. So we think with this podcast and just how we are even, there's a lot of bad things going on in the church. And there are...
Typically, that's all you hear.
That's all you hear. And it makes sense because A, it's important to expose the rot. You have to do that and burn it away with fire. I'm very, very grateful for people like Taylor Marshall or Church Militant doing that sort of work. But, you know, I also realize that affects you spiritually. Yeah. There are some people who are resilient and they can do that. And for me, I can get really angry and sulk about things. I know that you can too. But also, the Latin Mass brought us a lot of peace. Yeah. And it brought us a lot of joy, like genuine joy. I've always loved the Mass. I've always loved the concept of the Mass. But to be fulfilled, to be fed fully again, to have my love of Christ reinvigorated in that way. And so that's why we're doing this. We're doing this really because we don't want to shut up about the joy that has been brought in. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of darkness around the world. But again, we know that our Lord can be asleep in the boat because he knows that the victory is already won. Right. You know, Our Lady, like, there's no alternate universe where Our Lady doesn't defeat Satan. The serpent's head will be crushed. And also, like, there's memes and there's pipe smoking and there's cool, like, old books and tomes. Like, there's a lot to be excited about. And I think one of my kind of last point on it is, you know, again, I've heard this criticism. I've read this criticism, I should say, because there's that, well, the Latin Mass train, the traditionalist train. Well, now everyone's a traditionalist, actually, apparently, so I don't mind. Anyway, no, but
they changed the definition.
That's right. Whenever and wait until the music of David Haas is put aside Palestrina. If you were a traditional Catholic, you'll love the St. Louis Jesuits.
Suggested video.
Yeah. No, but there's this understanding that people say, well, you're just hunting for the aesthetics. You know, you're just going for the smells and bells. You're just hunting for, and you'll do anything for the liturgy without leading with Christ. And I say, suppose that I agreed with that premise, you know, The solution isn't to Protestantize the Mass because we believe that it's innately in Protestantism that gets us a closer relationship with Christ. That's what that argument reveals. The answer is that the Catholic Church is always a both and sort of religion.
Right.
You can have the smells and the bells. You can have the Latin Mass. You can have the full, high, solemn pontifical Mass. And you can have that radical devotion to Christ and to Christ's church. And that's how it flows. And what's very funny is I think that for people who make this sort of criticism, maybe some of you will ever watch this podcast, I encourage you really just to spend some time with a Latin Mass community. Go to your local fraternity church. And now I can say like local because they're developing like weeds. It's wonderful. Dawson popping up. And really just get a second to observe the people. I think what you'll find is that everyone's a normal person just like you. And there's so much love for Christ in the traditional Mass. And there's so much reverence and a desire to grow closer with him. And I know that that can be really strange and that can be really terrifying, and that you want to build the walls up. And as trads, a lot of times there's an impulse to circle the wagons too. But the demographics don't lie of the church. How the church is going to look in a decade is going to be completely different.
Yeah. And
for traditionalists, I think for you and I, with this podcast and with so many of our friends and the groups of people we're in, we're taking up the call to ironically, with Vatican II, to actually take those medieval walls and expand them.
Yeah.
Like we're looking to bring people into the church as it's been codified, as it's been revealed throughout history, throughout tradition, throughout the scriptures, and join us for heaven's sake. Like this is the time that we're all moving towards our sanctification. And our episode today, it's titled Our Lady's Command, but it really is the overview of spiritual warfare because we're in the trenches right now. Deals precisely with that the Church Militant is recruiting, that it's on the march, and it's time to get serious all the time, all the way.
Yeah, I want to backtrack a little bit and say a lot of people, because you mentioned that we were planning on radicalizing and kind of fortifying the walls of the church, right? And we're gonna do that, you and me, in a very small way, because you and I, well, I'm married now, and you're moving towards that too. Yeah. The way that you and I are going to do it is different from the way, like, perhaps somebody in clergy could do it, right? So you and I are going to form a family unit, and we're going to make damn sure that that family unit is fortified and set upon the foundation of Christ, upon traditionalism, and all that sort of things, all the sort of things that are good in the church that produce good life within you, right? So we're going to be doing that. And we don't understand, I think a lot of people don't really understand how much influence they have over their own salvation or upon the people around them, right? One of the things that was really disappointing to me was finding out that certain priests didn't understand how much influence they had by what they said, or by the lack of what they said, and that sort of thing. Yeah. But we have so much influence, and that's just like one thing that a lot of people don't really think about. But going back into what our episode is about, we've kind of been granted an opportunity. I think I look back at the beginning of going to the traditional Latin Mass, and like from that point to now, for me, it's been like a nice little vacation, right? I needed a recharge.
Yeah, that's true.
And if we're looking at it from the perspective of fighting a spiritual war, it's like being called home from the front lines and getting a little, what do they call it? R&R time?
Yeah, a little
rest and relaxation.
Rest and relief, whatever. Yeah.
So we've been granted this R&R time, and we're just kind of sitting here and kind of relaxing and figuring out, taking stock of what's inside, what we have available to us, and all that sort of thing. And now we're being pushed back into the front lines, but this time it's a little different. Yeah. We have so many other tools that we can draw upon to ensure survival in the spiritual war.
One thing that is funny, and I'll take because we're doing this, and is we've talked about. I've always said it's funny how the new evangelization, the thing that it got that was new, I would say, is the media, is the ability, is the internet space, is the digital space. But
hello, internet.
Hello, internet, my friends.
My friends, welcome to our podcast.
F's in the chat. No, I'm just kidding. but it's using the new media for the old evangelization. That's what the new evangelization actually is. So it's, again, the birth of podcasts like this one, the birth of TNT, the birth of Tumblr House, the birth of so many good commentators, the birth of memes. Platforms
have been created, like YouTube.
YouTube's
YouTube's not really that great anymore, but
no, but it used to be within Wild West.
It used to be. Yeah, Wild West YouTube.
Oh my. Well, you know what's funny is I found an Instagram page called is it 1962 Bride?
Yeah,
you know that one?
I know that one.
Yeah, and all it is it's posting Tridentine weddings and the photos from it, and it's so beautiful and it's very popular. But also it's using the internet space, which already is growing in that sort of tradition. Again, people are drawn to the elements of the Mass, the beautiful, and from the beautiful, they do discover the true. They do discover the richness of the faith. And even in terms of our own spiritual lives, there are channels like Sensus Fidelium, who I find wonderful for a myriad of topics from spiritual disciplines to understanding of the roles of husband and a father and a family life and vocation just in general, or peace of mind. And I mean, it's just a wellspring. And so right now it's good that we have these tools because the church is in a dark moment.
Yeah.
It's by God's grace that they found the arsonist for the suspected arsonist for the San Gabriel mission.
I didn't hear about that. That's good.
Yeah. Jen showed me that the other day. And
gee, will you look at that, guys? It wasn't just a coincidence.
Wow, wasn't just
that yeah. Who would have thought that a mission founded by Junipero Serra spontaneously combusted.
I know,
just
right?
like Notre Dame.
Well, now the Vatican had some bad timing on this one because they just elevated Mission San Buenaventura to a small basilica. Something basilica. Maybe it's not small, but minor basilica, maybe.
Minor, yeah.
Which is great, right? Which would be a good reason to celebrate. Thank you to the Vatican for such a thing. It's a very high honor and proper for the mission. But also, unfortunately, I feel like that might make it a hot target now. Now we've seen multiple missions vandalized. The statue we pulled down. We talked about that a lot in our last episode. So, it's like in this time of really giant craziness, it's by God's grace that we have tools both in the digital space and of course very physically with the sacramentals of the church to tie us all back together. Yeah. So you're right. It's been the Latin Mass for us has been a vacation. It has been a refuge. During coronavirus, I am so grateful that we kept the doors open. Yeah. I'm beyond, I understood even when we just didn't have it, feeling lost. It wasn't enough just to watch the Mass online, because to be there, to feel proximity close to the Blessed Sacrament, it's important. But now we're being called back to war. Yeah. And so we're going to do this the first way that Christians should do this, which is that we pick up the rosary and we pick up the sacramentals and we start really cultivating holy lives, especially in regards to our vocations.
Some of the greatest saints have recognized this, and they always begin with the rosary. I was reading about Saint Bartolo Longo. Have you heard of him?
No.
He was I forget when he was born. I think it might have been, I'd have to look it up again.
Was he Nigerian? Is he that one?
No, he's Italian.
Italian, right. Okay.
And he had a pretty well-off life. He went off to school, and he excelled in his classes and everything like that, but he got involved with the wrong crowd. Yeah. And it turns out that this guy, Bartolo Longo, he's not a saint actually, he's blessed. He got involved with Satanism. And he actually became a Satanist priest. So he was worshiping the enemy. Oof. And later on, he had a conversion, and he was thinking to himself, he went to confession, and he said, I can't... sorry, guys. One moment.
Married life, coming home. We're getting a visitor.
We're getting a visitor.
Who could it be? How's it going? Oh, yeah, actually.
All right.
No?
No.
If I walk. You can't? Go on.
So Bartolo Longo gets involved with the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
And he becomes a Satanist priest. And later on, he has a conversion. He goes to confession, but he realizes that it's not enough for what he did in his life. So what he does is he decides to go on a sort of like a spiritual crusade, and he wants to bring people back to Christ through the rosary. So he starts a rosary drive.
Wow.
In I think it was in Pompeii. And at the first time he did it, not many people came, maybe 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
You know. And being involved in ministry, like I feel that sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Like you do one thing and you're like, it's going to be amazing.
Awesome. Everyone's gonna.
It's going to be huge.
Huge ministry energy.
Yeah, huge ministry energy. So you work yourself up, and then like 2 people come. And it's like, oh, but he didn't give up. You know, he kept doing this rosary drive, and he was getting a lot of people in the end to come to Christ through the rosary.
Yeah,
that's an incredible and important weapon that we have. And if you're not praying the rosary, you have to pick it up. You have to start. You have to learn. You have to like focus up. The last video I did too, the standalone video, I talked about how you could pray a good rosary. So if you're having trouble with it, I mean, I had trouble with it in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, I was picking up the beads and just kind of, I just wasn't really getting anything out of it because I wasn't meditating on what it is, right? Yeah. Bartolo Longo, he calls it the cadena dulce, the sweet chain. The sweet chain between heaven and earth.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So that's certainly a really important one.
You know what's very funny is, so for me, getting into the habit of the rosary, what I'm realizing it is, again, I think that when we draw into our prayer life, that it can also serve as a fulfillment of a vocation. That helps me a lot.
Yeah.
So for me personally, right, I have always been drawn to, again, like the history, the apologetics of the church. Where my growth spot is diving deep into the spirituality of the church in that kind of very radical way. You know, what does regimented prayer and genuine prayer look like? You know, that's not just me getting ecstasy because I found out what this original was in Greek and why therefore Lutherans are wrong or something like that. Right. And that's important too. But for me, again, it's like, to give an example here. So Jen and I, we, you know, as you do on a trip, you pray the rosary, and you also ask for the intercession of Saint Christopher. But it's that as a man, you're head of the family. And they show all the time that if the man of the house doesn't have faith, that his children's likelihood of keeping the faith go astronomically low. Yeah. And we understand the role of the importance of the nuclear family, the importance of motherhood and fatherhood, but it's also important as men too that we submit in one regard in particular, besides to Christ, of course, and that's it, to have a devotion to Our Lady. And that's something that I've been feeling, especially this year, growing inside of me. Good. Because I know that Our Lady has taken a special attention to the kind of work that we're doing. That this is the kind of work for our son that's close to our heart. And so the rosary, what it does is it conforms us to the will of Christ, because it gives us our own fiat, our own yes, in the way that the Virgin Mary does. And that's why it's very funny, because now, this year, for instance, talk about how slow I was on the uptick. It was this year that I finally learned all the mysteries by heart. You know, that might sound really silly, right? Yeah. But it's important, because what that lets me do now is when you say, okay, the first sorrowful mystery, the agony in the garden, but what it actually means, to your point, you know, to really kind of meditate over all the things that have happened in Christ's lives, all the wounds that our Lady must have suffered, right, when her heart was pierced. And to really see yourself trying to conform to the will of God. And with all the madness that's out there right now, there is a great need for obviously for very physical presence for places. We've talked about the necessity, unfortunately, of Catholic Defense Leagues. We're in Catholic Defense Leagues now, right? We're in quick reaction forces where and sometimes, of course, as young men, we're like, oh, I hope they start something at my church. Well, they better not. Not really. Well, yes, really, but not really. But at the same time, Catholics are called to be warriors of prayer, first and foremost. And the rosary is our greatest weapon that we've been given. It literally fights Satan, right? Padre Pio girds up his hands with the rosary and punches the devil in the face. And there's a real magnificent poetry to even to that physical reality that happens in our spiritual life when we do the rosary, when we look to the spiritual masters with great devotion. This year I picked up novenas.
Yeah,
I never did.
Novenas are
I honestly did not know what a novena was until, or at least I thought I didn't know what a novena was until this year. And now to see that there are devotions, right? The last one I just did was to Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which is special to me because that's where Jen and I will get married, for heaven's sake.
Right.
So to kind of see that in the world of darkness, the response isn't just by force physically, but it really is first and foremost to conform ourselves to God's will. And the only way that we do that is with prayer and serious prayer. And as you said, like if you're not doing that, it's time to really pick yourself up for the team, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to get through a lot of this madness. I find. Well,
there's definitely two battlefields, right? There's the interior battlefield, and in my missal there's a really beautiful prayer after communion, where it says, it essentially, I'm going to paraphrase, but it basically says, after I'm done conquering myself on earth, may I be worthy to enter into heaven. Wow. So there's that one spiritual battle.
Is that Father Sans missal?
It's the Father Sans missal. I'm sure that's I imagine that it's common enough that there might be something similar to
Nothing
that.
that the Laudate app can't fix.
Yeah, or something.
Right.
Or you can get that little prayer book. Yeah. But that's the first battlefield, the battlefield within yourself. And then there's the battlefield outside, where we're encountering people lighting our churches on fire, turning down our statues, trying to make us afraid.
Yeah.
And then the third battlefield is the spiritual battlefield that we cannot see. The place where the physical and the ethereal meet, where entities like demons are, and they can attack you physically or be in your presence and sort of just disrupt your peace, right? So there's three different battlefields that we're constantly fighting in, and we have to be aware that they exist.
Yeah.
And the good thing about the rosary is that it sort of kind of takes care of both or two battlefields, right? So the interior.
They can also be built a little sharp for the other one.
Yeah. So if you wrap it around your fist and you catch an Antifa goon, some Antifa goon in your church.
Hail Mary, full of grace, punch a heretic in the face.
Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? I'm waiting for you.
Stop.
Yeah, I guess it could fit for all three.
Yeah.
But, I was driving the other day and I was thinking, I'm an extremist.
Oh, you heard it first.
Bishop Barron thinks that there's a lot of Catholic traditional extremists, right? And I am an extremist because I would say that there's two schools of thought, right? One school of thought will say, or maybe three. One school of thought will say that the Second Vatican Council can be interpreted from the hermeneutic of continuity, right? Another school of thought says we have to modify the documents, take out what's bad, and then leave what's good, which I sometimes lean into that camp.
It's literally possible.
But then I was thinking the other day while I was driving, I'm an extremist. I want to get rid of the whole thing. I want to just relegate, like Archbishop Vigano, I just want to relegate it to a dark corner of history.
Footnote of history is a phrase I like to use.
Because it's going to be really hard to keep it if we want to take the Mass and make it what it used to be. And I would say that is a good thing to do, because we need, it's the problem of extra ecclesiam, right?
Yeah.
So not extra ecclesiam, it's the problem of lex credendi.
Lex credendi, yeah.
So if we're working on our spiritual life, it's going to be really hard to work on our interior life if what we're getting for food, like spiritual nourishment, is like Marty Hagen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys saw the video of the church that is giving out Holy Communion in packets, like little envelopes.
For taking away in your car. So and then you consume our Lord in your car.
Yeah.
So
if we're receiving all of that, which is basically like giving sugar to a kid, we're gonna have a really hard time to go home and understand our influence as fathers.
Yeah.
And take the lead. we're going to have a hard time to look at our interior life and say, okay, there's certain things that I have to change. So in that regard, I'm going to say that I'm an extremist, and then we have to change things.
You know, this is one, I think about this. So Father Ripperger, in his talks on exorcism, talks about how the new rite, how the exorcists use the old rite prayers, and these exorcist prayers go back. They're some of the earliest prayers in Christianity. I was really surprised how deep their roots go, like codified roots in terms of how the structure is of these prayers. And a lot of these demons, like, it's not, you know, it's not saying that there is an illegitimacy for holy water of the new mass, that there's illegitimacy of exorcisms in the new rite. But some of these demons are deep, and they find more and more that it's holy water that's triple exorcised in the old rite, right? Just as important as baptism in the old rite, which triple exercises.
This is the Fiji water.
Yeah, this is
water.
That's exactly it. It's a Fiji water. Right? It's the Elizabeth well water of the tap water of the world. We still have to do that. Now we have the means to. We're gonna have to do water experiments.
Oh, the water test.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
eat your words, boy.
I think that was like the 3rd episode or something. We were gonna do a water test.
People were excited. But what we're finding is that that's very true for the spiritual life. It is hard to talk about a cultivation of real serious prayer, like real serious devotion, real serious family dynamics, all that kind of stuff, and then have the mass be banal.
Yeah,
we've seen this, and this is funny. It's very funny why, again, this soft referendum that's going on. Okay, well, that's all well and good, except here's one problem: we're 60 years on from the council. Yeah. We're not in theoretical time. And I can't find. Again, I read a really wonderful book, The 21 Ecumenical Councils, by Father John O'Malley, Society of Jesus. And who seems to be a good Jesuit, but I'm not sure, but I think he is. Read that book.
What era was it?
I mean, he's in his 90s now, so I don't know when he actually wrote the book, though. Okay. But it's a series of lectures. That's what it is. It's an audiobook. It's a series of lectures, and they're good. They're good history. Yeah. And I learn about councils that also could be scrapped from the books necessarily. Mm-hmm. Not Florence, but there's one that was very political against the East, and it doesn't teach like dogma or doctrine, but it's like, for the sake of unity, you could probably modify this. Right. Point being is that, you know, it is, you know, we want that spiritual devotion, that cultivation. And the thing about it is, as a Catholic, we've grown up our entire lives looking up to big saints. Not just saints who have come in the past, the latter part of the 20th century, right? Like Mother Teresa and John Paul II. But we've learned about the history of the Church of Saints. We've learned about St. Augustine, St. Thomas More, St. Basil the Great. All these people, St. Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor, and we've seen Cardinal Henry Newman, who apparently would have been a great proponent of Vatican II. Gonna have to come back to that one. But the question again comes to, when we see that something is working to sustain the Church. When I read, you know, the prayers that Father Lassans might write, and this is something from the 20s, for heaven's sake. When I read. I have a book called Our Glorious Popes by a nun from the 1950s, and it reads like such a Catholic book, fighting against Mohammedans and the scoundrels of the Orthodox Church and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, look, like, I understand that we're fighting a war for the salvation of souls all of a sudden. And so, yeah, it's when it comes to serious prayer and devotion, the Rosary itself, one of my favorite popes, Pope Pius V, cultivates Our Lady of Victory, who is Our Lady of the Rosary, because of the Battle of Lepanto. This is the same Pope who codified the Tridentine Mass. So guess what I think? I see that all of it is connected. This is literally the soil that gave birth to so many well springs of the Church. And I can't find 60 years past Trent a desire for a referendum on Trent. It just doesn't exist.
Not to go back to, you know, to Vatican II too much, but...
Not too much.
But, I mean, you mentioned Lepanto, right? And if we're asking the question, do Christians and Muslims believe the same God, then explain Lepanto.
Yeah, what a tragedy.
You know, it's a civil war. If it's almost as if something had changed, right? Yeah. Like, we decided that the past didn't make any sense, kind of like what we're experiencing today. Yeah. And they said, well, no, let's forget about Lepanto, because in Lepanto it was like a massive war. So were we believing the same thing? Mm-hmm. I don't think so. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had this great rosary victory of Lepanto.
If you want to, for our viewers, if you want to have a book, I'll maybe link in the description. We'll link our other resources. I think would be good. But it's called Empires of the Sea. It's a wonderful book about the entire 150 year span of war between the Southern Catholic kingdoms, who were going through the Protestant Reformation, dealing with that, and the Ottoman Empire, which was creeping from the east, and the real serious religious wars. And what's very funny about this era that we don't have now is the serious religiosity of both sides. I think that the Islamic world is retaining it back. It's by no coincidence that Erdogan, who's essentially the new Ottoman Sultan, is turning Hagia Sophia into a mosque.
Yeah.
Right. Any more than it is that Putin has suddenly become Tsar of Russia again and is now working very closely with the Orthodox Church. I mean, these things, the more things change, the more they stay the same, I find.
Yeah.
And so, but reading these people, these very serious, literal warriors in that case, spiritual warfare that made itself manifest, they knew that they were fighting for different stakes.
Yeah.
They knew that the God of Muhammad was, you have three, again, this isn't Christian conspiracy theory. There are three options that you have for a non-Muslim. You convert, you pay the jizya, the tax, and you're essentially subdued. You can't rebuild your churches. You can't do this. You can't do that. If you're a janissary, your children might be stolen in the middle of the night. Sorry. Or the third one is that you fight the unbelievers until they feel totally subdued.
Yep. Okay,
so that's all on the table. As Christians, we go, well, you should convert, otherwise God's gonna have a real serious talk with you in the end. Which is kind of nicer. But no, it's the importance again is that especially now, people are realizing where the heroes of the faith lie. Where are the priests who are leading their people? Archbishop Corleone and the rosary and the exorcism that happens at his statue of Junipero Serra. Right. I mean, what wonderful things, right? The priests who are working hard to not just keep open during the pandemic, but who are extolling the importance of the sacrament, or extolling the importance of holy faith. And
the priests and bishops who are looking at doctrinal errors and saying, for the sake of the laity, I'm going to ask you this very difficult question. I need you to clarify this document that you're saying, or this statement that you said, because people's souls are at stake.
That's what it is. And I think everyone's getting done on getting by with a technicality.
Yeah.
When I meet the Lord, it's the grace of God working upon us and us responding to that kind of grace. But when I meet the Lord, I can completely say for myself that it's either going to be him or it's going to be nothing. I don't think anybody gets tricked into heaven. Right. Is what a lot of this new understanding of spirituality is. It's like, well, cultivate a relationship with Jesus. That's important.
You mean I can come in?
That's what there is no. Now, chat, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but there is no record of a saint, which is someone who's in heaven, coming back from the dead saying, I was staunch, I was an ISIS member, and then I turned out I was okay, though, because I didn't know any better, and I met God. Yeah. I find that Dante, the answer, I think the medievals, right, when they dealt with the question of limbo, one of the things that's interesting is that Dante places righteous pagans, and even he places Saladin, for heaven's sake, in limbo. Right, this is the first circle of hell, so it's still separation from God, but it's like a through no fault of their own sort of a thing. Right. Because also, and Dante places Virgil there, but Virgil can't ascend to Mount Purgatory because in order to be in purgatory means you are still on your path for salvation, which is to see the beatific vision, which is to be with our Lord forever in paradise. Right. This all goes to show that, to your point, it's like when we talk about seriously spiritual cultivation, we do have to govern what we read, what we put into our bodies, of course. And that comes down to our prayers.
For goodness sakes, I mean, as guys, like, you have to really be careful with your eyes.
Oh, my.
You have to be ultra careful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing. I would say, to segue into, like, another aspect of, like, a spiritual tool for the warfare that we're experiencing is fasting. I don't think we talk about fasting.
We don't talk about fasting nearly enough. That was
because it's hard.
That was one of the best things. That was one of the best things that ever came out of it. Sucks, but you know what it is? It's kind of nice. Now, like this is one of the best things that happened in Exodus 90 for me, because fasting, what it does, even just physically. I'll start with physical because it's kind of cool. Fasting actually will sharpen you. Yeah. Because hunger is a driving force just in terms of being a human. So you'll feel yourself getting a little feral. I say it is, and so you will be focused. Because you're like, okay, because if I do this and I'm going to eat at some point, and that's awesome. But it's a good thing, too, because when you fast with our Lord as the ultimate amount, it really is funny how the passions cease to govern you. When you're not governed by your stomach, you now are learning the tools to not be governed by your concupiscence, to be governed by your sloth, to be governed by money or any of the other things, because you're literally taking away something which sustains you, but you're doing it for the sake of the kingdom. You're
reordering yourself to something higher.
Yeah.
You're saying, senses, you don't govern me. I govern you.
Yeah.
That's like a really keen inversion that we have to do as men and as Catholics in general. We have to invert that and say, no, I'm in control. I'm doing it this way. And then that way you're free. You're more free to work on your spiritual life because you're stronger. It's almost like working a muscle.
You know, it is, because your spiritual life is a muscle.
Yeah.
And it waxes and it wanes and it gets stronger, right? And then sometimes you need to add more weight in order to get it to grow again, or you need
our muscles are deteriorating.
Right. Oh, I know, right? Oh my gosh.
Because we can't go to the gym
We
anymore.
went to the gym for one day, and then it closed down again.
Oh, man,
and they're like, you got to wear a mask at a temp check. It's garbage. Don't get out of California. What are you doing here?
You guys want to hear a funny story?
I want to hear a funny story.
The day that we went to the gym, we went in together at the same time, and
oh my gosh,
we're obviously like
together, workout
right?
buddies.
And the guy's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, guys. You have to come in one at a time,
one by one."
We're already wearing masks and everything. It's like,
So
dude, come on, man.
Dude, we'll play by your reindeer game.
It's just like going to a restaurant too. Like you have to wear the mask, and then
you take
it off.
Waiter still comes anyway. This is how you know.
You put it back on and get
Did
through.
Did you see that Fauci was he went to a baseball game, threw the first pitch, and then he put his mask down for the time.
He also social distanced the ball from home plate.
Is that what we're calling it? I will say this to your point. Christ mentions prayer and fasting so many times, and it's very funny how fasting is one of the things that we don't really think about. Even now, like one of the traditional devotions as a trad you do is we abstain from meat on Fridays.
I kind of messed that up today.
You wanna have a confession, my son?
Yeah, guys, pay attention to what you're doing. Okay, like this is what we're talking to you about.
That's right.
Otherwise, you make a stupid mistake like I did today.
Well, it's okay, because remember, you're not oath bound, because you can substitute so every Catholic is still bound to do an act of penance on Fridays.
Yeah,
this is something that's completely, of course, gone away mysteriously. We could talk about how evil the old ways were, but suddenly when it comes to the new ways, actually saying, no, you still got to do penance. We just kind of forget about this one. So it doesn't, for traditionally that has meant the abstention of meat on Fridays.
Yeah.
Which is good, because when you want to have that leftover pasta with turkey in it, which is what I wanted to have for breakfast this morning, you go, wait, I can't, because it's Friday. And it might sound like a small, silly devotional, but it's not, because again, it's orienting, it's reminding, okay, because Jesus is Lord, and I'm doing this for you, Lord. And so if you don't fast, you don't have to though, but you still have to do penance. So some people supplement that with a particular kind of rosary or prayer life, acts of service for the church, something like that.
My act of reparation for this mistake is gonna happen tomorrow.
I'm
gonna carry it on tomorrow, and tomorrow I was hoping to
Can we see our Lord in this? We're focusing a little bit. I shouldn't have moved. Our Lady weeps. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So tomorrow I was looking forward to eating a particular dish, but now it's penance.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. So what are the kind of things you're doing now in your spiritual life that you would probably recommend? What are you reading or kind of? I know that you're doing a daily rosary.
Doing a daily rosary,
right, with your wife, which is awesome.
Yeah, you know what? We can go back to talk about men as being spiritual leaders of the household.
Yeah,
obviously, it becomes more concrete when you get married. Mm-hmm. Because then you become the head of the household, right? And so you have a responsibility to make sure that you're praying together. You have a responsibility to be accountable for your wife's soul, and hopefully she's being accountable, or she's making sure that you're accountable too.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a hierarchy. You're really responsible for your wife's soul.
Yeah.
So that's one way to backtrack, to talk about influence again. You have to understand that as a man, you have to have that influence over your household. Otherwise, you're sleeping at the wheel, and you know, maybe
pulling an Adam.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly. You're pulling an Adam, or to make a reference to the scriptures. You never know when the thief is going to come in.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that thief maybe is not so much a literal thief, but it could be that, for example, either me or you know, Ashley, we start doing something that is detrimental to our spiritual life.
Yeah.
And then guess what? All of that's going to play out in your household, right? Because if you're not ordered interiorly, oh man, everything's going to bother you. Everything's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
right?
That's completely true. And it's funny, you know, I was with Jen has a set of an aunt and an uncle who come with us to mass or attend St. Vitus on their own, and they've developed a really, really good spiritual devotion, really good prayer life together. And what her aunt was saying is, you know, in regards to men in our spirituality, is that, yeah, you know, it is us as heads of the household.
Yeah.
And it means that you have to cultivate and be able to lead a spiritual life as head of the household.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because, you know, a headship conversation hasn't come into either of our lives until relatively recently. Because again, it's been one of those understandings that has been lost.
Yeah.
And I think for both of us, like, to see it is important, but also to really be able to cultivate it has helped a lot. And what you are doing and what I'm preparing myself to do is to be that spiritual stronghold. Mm-hmm. You know, as a man, you are the first and foremost protector of your house. You are the first and foremost protector of your wife, because your desired devotion as a husband is to get your wife to heaven.
Yeah.
And so vice versa too.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you discover is that in our hierarchy with Christ first, and then the man leads his family, and the mother leads the children and all that kind of stuff. It's a matter of submission to the higher will of Christ in the best way possible. And
this is exactly what it means when, you know, in the scriptures it says, husbands, love your wives.
Yeah.
As Christ loves the church. It's a sacrificial type of love.
And it's such a tragedy that this has been lost, because we heckle, or we have to hear the feminist talking point when you hear wives submit to your husband, but we don't realize the reciprocal understanding of what that really means. It's giving yourself over to one who knows, loves you so much that they will be able to safeguard your soul. Mm-hmm. I mean, and again, this episode's Our Lady's command. It's not like we're just out trudging doing our own thing. We are completely fallen to the feet of Our Lady.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when there was a statue back east that was defamed, that they wrote idol on of Our Lady, and that kind of stuff runs deep.
Yeah. It
runs deep, because this is, you know, this is the mother of our Lord, and this is our mother. Mm-hmm. Just as at the end of John, when he gives the Virgin Mary to the church, you know, woman, behold your son, you know, behold your mother. Mm-hmm. And so boom, it's like we have to have that devotion, we have to have that cultivation. And the rosary is that great weapon that's been given. You know what really kind of jump-started my Marian devotion? Because I think for a lot of guys, getting married. No, it wasn't that. I remember, this is kind of a stupid story. I'll tell you about childhood Rudy, like 16 years ago. Do you want to stretch out on the couch? Tell me about it. Yeah, let me lay down. Jordan, tell me how you feel. Tell me. Yeah. Jordan, are you listening? Time's up. Well, that'll be $700. Oh my gosh. No, as a child, I never understood devotion to Mary. Yeah. I thought it was like, from a stupid child perspective, I was like, oh, that's like taken away from God. Yeah. But what really kickstarted that, man, I'm embarrassed to say that. I think I'm turning red. What kickstarted that devotion was doing the consecration to Jesus through Mary. And I have a book here. This was written by Michael E. Gately. It's a pretty accessible version. I would recommend it for the first time. But essentially what you're doing is you're consecrating yourself to Jesus through Mary, and you're imploring her to be the mediatrix between you and Christ. And
One of the really awesome examples they make in this book, Michael Gately, I think he's a priest, he makes the example that at the end of your life, when you go up to the judgment seat, the film of your life is going to be playing, right? Yeah. And hopefully you've made a really good confession before you go, so you can edit the movie. So
hopefully
that
the
nice,
awesome
right?
parts are in slow motion.
So for most people, that's going to be the example,
yeah.
right? But for him, the example that he gave was, instead of that, it would be like a peasant giving an apple to the queen and the queen presenting it to the king. And as a peasant, I'm giving her an apple, right? But what our Blessed Mother is doing with all of our prayers, with all of our life, she is wrapping it in this beautiful gold box, and she's putting it on like this incredible silver plate, and she's giving it to the king. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what consecration is in a nutshell. I know that's kind of like a dumbed down version. There's obviously more than that. But I would say that if you're looking for something to jumpstart your Marian devotion, it would be something like this: Consecration to Jesus through Mary. This is a really simple version. Ashley and I have done this twice, but we're looking to do the traditional version with a book by Saint Louis de Montfort. Mm-hmm. And I have another book I would recommend also called The Secret of the Rosary. This is by Saint Louis de Montfort. I have extra copies. I can give you one, Jordan.
I would very much appreciate that.
But there's like really awesome observations here. And you read it once, you read one meditation per day. And I have a few highlighted here, so I can kind of give you just a little taste, right? He's talking about the glorious mysteries, and just in general the rosary. He's saying, these are the 15 fragrant flowers of the mystical rose tree. Devout souls fly to them like wise bees, so as to gather their nectar and make honey of a solid devotion. I mean, it's just like his writing is just poetry and beautiful, you know, and I think that has something. What a coincidence! Sorry, I just opened to this page, and that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah, Our Lady's like, get him, Rudy.
So through our devotion to Our Lady, we're receiving the instruments that we can make a beautiful life out of, right? Mm-hmm. A spiritual life out of. So these two books I would recommend highly, and even Saint Louis de Montfort's consecration formula to Jesus through the Rosary, to Jesus through Mary. Those are two really awesome ones.
I'll be sure to put them in the description.
Yeah,
so we can see. We'll do it live. I'm just kidding.
We'll do it live.
I'm reading. So for mine, and I've been reading this all year because it's a good slow meditation read. But I'm still on Imitation of Christ.
That's a good one.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's it reminds me a lot of
Thomas A.
Kempis. Mm-hmm. It reminds me a lot of Confessions by St. Augustine in terms of really plowing into your interior life, mm-hmm. and realizing both your wickedness and your capacity for good that God plants inside of you. So those two and Imitation of Christ, you know, have you know, this year especially has been so many graces, so many so many gratitudes for God. I'm actually totally prepared to go to Mass in the morning tomorrow. I pop out because I need to make a really serious Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. But it's all wonderful. And again, this year's cultivated a lot of darkness around. We've seen, to have the sacraments ripped out, to have our interior lives disturbed. I mean, there's no way to, the whole last 3 months that we were in, there was a lot of spiritual dryness. Yeah. And I was doing a lot of meditation on when Christ cries out from the cross, my God, why have you abandoned me? Which is something that's surreal to wrap your mind around, mm-hmm. meditate on it for the rest of my life. Because I felt that second of, well, I know that the Lord is in charge and Christ is reigning on high, but man, this is some gutter fighting right now. And now especially, but I think now, even as things have progressed, there are these tools available. And as Catholics, we're not afraid to show them. We're not afraid to come out in spades and do our rosaries. Yeah. Come out and to really focus on the interior life. This past year has been a time of really tremendous growth, not just, of course, in my own life personally, but it's been a huge amount of growth for the latinmass.
Yeah.
Huge amount of growth. And it's continued. But I've noticed that the tone has shifted to being prepared for that battle. And the first battle, the foremost battle, is the battle against Satan. Mm-hmm. And so, I know we've extolled this for our viewers, especially those who don't have access to the Mass yet, not readily access to the Mass, not the beauty of the Tridentine Rite or any sort of Mass. And since I'm going tomorrow, I'm going to remind y'all to go tomorrow. If you need to go to confession, go to confession. Make a good confession, and as our priest extolled upon us, work this time to really stay out of sin.
Yeah.
Because the uncertainty nowadays is tremendous. And in the midst of this trench warfare that we're having, we don't know when our time will come. We don't know what the Lord is going to ask of us. So this is the time that we really do conform ourselves to the will of Our Lady, to the will of our Lord, and to make a really good, genuine effort to get right with God and to make our households perfectly oriented towards the social kingship of Christ.
Yeah. So these are four tools that we're giving you to put in your toolbox.
Yeah.
The rosary as a daily prayer.
Mm-hmm.
You have spiritual reading. It could be history if you want, but I would say spiritual reading is more apt for you. I think it's more important, so that you can start building an interior life.
It's good. It's better for the interior life.
Yeah, and then you have...
But history certainly does help.
Yeah, history is fun, you got to mix it up every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Then you have fasting. And what was the fourth one, Jordy?
So let's see. We have interior life, prayer, fasting, the rosary.
The consecration to Mary.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Consecration
say,
to Jesus through Mary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are going to kickstart your spiritual life. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
After reading these sorts of things, being more informed about your faith, there's no way that you can continue living a life that is unworthy or unmeritorious.
Contrary to the message of the gospel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you start to understand, again, this is going right back into influence. You realize, look, there's certain things that I have to do in order to get into heaven. Mm-hmm. And it's not as easy as me just like walking in and just happens to be that St. Peter's going to open up the gate.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't work that way.
Many are called, but few are chosen.
Exactly. And you have to continually fight yourself.
Yeah.
Because you got to realize that there are three battlefields: the interior battlefield, the external battlefield, and the spiritual battle. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are. And hopefully at the end of our life, we're going to have fought the good fight.
Yeah.
In order to take refuge in Christ. So what are we at in time right now?
We're doing good. I think that are you mad about anything?
Oh, man.
Not after this one. Or you are mad about things?
Those Bishop Barron videos. Man.
Oh no, I don't.
Give me a break.
Now I want to be mad about something else differently. It's like because I know if we start on this one, we won't ever stop.
Yeah.
This will be. I'll try to make this as quick, but we know it. Rudy, let me ask you a question. You consider yourself a traditional Catholic man?
Yeah.
All right. You're married.
Yeah.
Happily married.
Yeah.
Does your wife love you?
Yeah.
Does your wife love you even when you play Rocket League?
Yeah, she does actually. Because it's recreation.
Why would you call yourself a traditional Catholic when you play video games, my dude? How dare you? How dare?
I forgot about this, Jordy. All right, so there's an Instagram page called Trad Feminism.
Oh, there we go.
And this is the woman at your parish that
she does some very good work.
She does some good work, but you get married to her, and then it turns out you can't ever meet with the boys ever again.
That's right. Your life's over.
Nope. Because you need to be home and you need to be doing this, and this, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Talk about hierarchy.
I don't remember agreeing to never seeing my friends again.
Yeah, right.
Well, anyway, this account they put up a post and they were critiquing men who play video games recreationally. And look, I'm not going to get too mad about it because they have a point.
Yes. Yes.
Some people can take it to excess. And I have tried to dial back even more now because when coronavirus first started, the reason I started playing video games more is because I needed connection. I really needed connection. I was feeling really isolated.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel that way. Unfortunately, some of my friends, they're still isolating to a great extent. Mm-hmm. But as soon as Mass started opening up, we started hanging out, we started seeing other people, you know, I was checking it off a different way.
Yeah.
You know, but no, I get it. Some people that, you know, I personally know a lot of people who play too much, you know, they spend like 8 hours a day, maybe even more, you know, hooked onto the console.
I've always said this, and I get it, right? Because I can say as one who pays a special attention to men's issues, it's very, very...
Men's rights?
Yeah, well, some issues, but it's for men especially. We know this with that men and women have kind of different sort of triggers of what they can get lost and addicted into. Not always the time, but for men, there's a very special train. There's a lot of times with men where we take it too far. They disappear into video games and pornography and all these other sorts of things, and sloth and laziness. Yeah. And it's not becoming of a man to do this. As a man, it's not just, it's the spiritual rigors and it's also the physical rigors, which is why we talk about the importance of going to the gym, staying healthy, right? Getting your beard game on point. Like,
if you can grow one. If you can grow one, do it.
Are you even a trad if you can't grow a beard? You're not Orthodox if you can't grow a beard.
No, you can't be Orthodox.
No, I think
you can't be an Orthodog.
You can be Lutheran if you don't have a beard, but not Calvinist. That's John Calvin had that beard. My point being is that, again, to Rudy's earlier point, it's recreational. And it's very fun. It's just a little snippet point. But again, Rudy's talked about this earlier. But you can't criticize the football game, right? You know, you can't criticize Friday Night Lights as recreation, but you can somehow criticize playing Rocket League, and that's apparently unbecoming and childish. But I think that people really fail to understand the medium that video games really hold, and they're an art form completely of their own right. I just finished playing Red Dead Redemption 2. And I think that is the best Western right now ever, certainly of the video game genre, by spades. And the story is extremely gripping. And there were moments that were so touching. And just as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I was like, there's just so much wealth to this.
Yeah.
Now, you don't overboard it. We like to play Rocket League. We like to have a good time. But it doesn't come to the neglect of your duties as a husband or any of my obligations. So the answer is let the boys play. Because they're not talking to girls if they're with the boys.
Well, I don't know.
Well, wait a second. Really?
I don't know about that one.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I'm just playing.
But now, look. I mean, for me, for the most part, video games have become an outlet for me to interact with people.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing for me right now. And like I said about coronavirus, I mean, that's genuinely how it happened. I was just like, man, I feel alone. Ashley and I aren't married yet. You know, I'm in this house and I'm locked in here.
Jordan's been bugging me about Rocket League.
I'm going to give it a shot. And these are memories that we're making through a video game, which sounds kind of stupid, but you know, we're hanging out. We're talking about big things.
It's social.
And
yeah.
We have an opportunity to evangelize.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not joking.
That's completely true.
I've had this opportunity many of times. I've talked to Ashley about this. I mean, there are times where I've like, this was before Ashley and I got married, but, you know, I was up until like 2 a.m. having a theological discussion with an atheist or someone who was agnostic and questioning their faith, and they're away from the church. And guess what? Video games have become a medium for me to evangelize to this guy.
You know what it is? It's the forum.
Yeah.
The public forum.
Yeah.
So Aristotle talks about friendships being built around that transcendent third, but also that gives us a space legitimately to talk about issues. We're not just, we're being obviously very kind of tongue-in-cheek for our clan name. Vatican II was a mistake, and we're running around with our Vatican flags and having fun.
Right.
But generally, I mean, you saw Rudy's video, hopefully, and if you didn't, click it, a video from a couple times ago.
It was
Bishop
kind of
Bear
a
and Rocket League of the New Evangelization.
Clickbaity.
It's kind of fun.
Just trying to get the audience.
Yeah, but you know, but it's a genuine point. There was a genuine evangelization moment with a person who did not believe in God.
Right.
And that conversation never would have happened if we weren't just hanging out, doing our thing, playing as a legitimate Catholic clan. So,
and not to make it like too extravagant, but because you're playing a video game, you're in a neutral setting versus if, for example, you're like somebody comes up to you and they say, look, I want to debate you on why you believe this is in this. It's more of like, hey, I just happened to run into you, and I noticed that you're not Christian. In fact, you have doubts. And guess what, man? We're playing a video game together. Why don't we talk about how there's probably things that can refute your position?
Yeah. There's a great, I mean, I'm sure we'll do an episode on it because it's a whole one. The breakdown of what makes for not just moderation of gaming, but also the right kind of video gaming.
That's the other thing too. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend you play like Grand Theft Auto or anything like that. I mean, that's like,
yeah, right.
That's like trash, man. Like, I don't know. Like, there's bad video games, certainly.
There's bad video games, certainly. And
but Rocket League, dude, it's a car. You're playing Soccer.
Rocket League is like
Soccer, bro.
Do you remember? Here's the thing. This is why you know that there are joyless trads. Got it. Do you remember what it was like to be 10 years old, 12 years old, right, 13 years old, and you invite the boys over and they're on your couch and you're playing Battlefront 2 and you're like having a good time.
Yeah,
that's what Rocket League reminds me of.
Sharing an experience.
I haven't had. It's in terms of video gaming, so much of it has been locked in conversations on microtransactions and graphics and all this other kind of stuff. And we forgot about fun a little bit along the way. And of course, it's great to have an entailing story and gripping lines and really art forms of video games. And that they're also extremely fun and engaging. I love you, Red Dead. I love you so much. But man, it's nice to just let your hair down a little bit and you don't have any cares in the world. Rocket League does that kind of thing. There are plenty of video games. Nintendo's capitalized on those sorts of games. And you know what? It's not hurting anyone. It doesn't neglect from your duties, you know?
Like, hopefully, yeah. Just be aware of it.
Just be aware of it.
Just be aware.
And all things moderation. And also give it up for Lent. We're done.
Give it up for Lent. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
It's a good spiritual weapon too. Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't already, you can go ahead and hit that like button. Leave a comment. This is the last little Bastions chat. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys.
We're really, really grateful to you who have been sharing these videos. I keep meeting people who have listened, who have heard of it, getting the word out. Look at our subscriber count. I mean, only a month ago we were below 100.
Yeah.
And now it's really great. Thank you so much for those who have been following us on Instagram and on Twitter. If you haven't already, the handle is @GladTradPodcast. And if we're going to link or update the description to talk about the resources here. The Secret of the Rosary, St. Louis de Montfort, 33 Days to Mourn in Glory, and of course, the Imitation of Christ. So, and of course, please pray the rosary every day. Make sure that you keep your weapons sharp. I think that's about covers the bases, don't you think?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I think so too.
From us here in Dreamland, as we like to say. You actually don't do that actually, because you have the microphone for it now.
From us here in Dreamland.
Ooh, chills.
Chills.
God bless you. May I keep you. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.